really interesting. James, who comes on from Arsenal sometimes from The Athletic, wrote a piece when the signing was done, and he intimated in the column that he wrote that it was more of a sporting director signing. He was sort of, reading through it, looks like I think the club were in for Sesko for probably going back 6 months, and that the new sporting director had come in and really
They have a private relationship, don't they? They've worked together before, is that right? The sporting director and Gyökeres? I think that's true.
Oh, I'm not sure.
I think so.
I'm not sure.
Know,
but I thought it was just an interesting little nugget in the piece. He obviously got his information, as he always does, and I thought it was really interesting that and how that'll sort of affect sort of Arteta, going forward in terms of picking him. But no, it's. I mean, Scholes, you've been saying it for a long time, haven't you?
Yeah, centre forward. Just wonder if you chose the right one. You don't know till it happens. And I think James got a good point. I wasn't, because there was a lot of umming and ahhing about it, and it was taking a bit of time. I was wondering, does Arteta really want him? Is he the main one he wants? I wasn't too sure. Now, look, he's got him, and he's had a really strange career path, I think, hasn't he? He has, honestly. Yeah. Weird, Brighton, Coventry, and he's gone Sporting Lisbon, and his goal record is absolutely brilliant. You can't take that away from him. And you think, if any team that you could go to that creates chances, then it should be Arsenal. It should be a really good match, but we just don't know what happens here.
I think it will be, just because I think Arteta is very good he will change systems up depending on the team that he's playing in. I think he's quite, sometimes he overthinks it for sure. But I just think if we're in another one of those situations where we're 2-0 up and then magically by the 65th minute it's 2-2, happens a lot if you go through. Even if Gyökeres hasn't started that game, which would be weird, but let's say he hasn't, then you can just change your tactics to you go on and you score. And every Arsenal fan I've talked to has been, I don't want to drop him back. Don't do Harry Kane type stuff. Not even Isak, because Isak kind of sort of gets himself
He's
around.
not that type of player anyway, though. He's more of a bulldozer.
Exactly, and that's what his job should be. You score goals. Who was it? Was it Neil Warnock that once said to a player, if you drop behind the halfway line, I'll never play you again? That's what Arteta should say to Gyökeres. Like, you stay there.
You're going to get Neil Warnock into the fan debate today.
Well, no, that's true. But I remember he said it once, and I was like, that's what Gyökeres' tactics.
The only thing I'd say against Gyökeres, really, with Sporting Lisbon, he's probably playing on a counter-attack a lot in Europe, especially. You think of Arsenal, they had the ball an awful lot. Now, is he going to be clever enough to make these little runs in behind? A lot of it, you see, he's sprinting from the halfway line almost, and he can't keep up, and he's ramming people like that. He's quick, and he's smashing the ball in. Now, is he going to be that clever striker to do that? We know Isak can do that, don't we?
Oh, yeah. I think that's why
Gyökeres do that.
You know what I thought was interesting? That even though the two teams going for the title last season, Liverpool and Arsenal, all the supporters were probably crying out for a centre forward. And obviously Isak was the dream for probably both teams, but they both went for different strikers and were not both in for the same striker, if you know what I mean. So, Gyökeres, Liverpool, I don't think were interested there. It didn't seem like Arsenal were interested to take out, probably completely different sorts of players, maybe different styles. So I do think it'll be interesting. But Simon, I can't help but notice you've got a black eye. I mean, all I'm thinking is, what's the other fella look like?
If somebody insults Arsenal, I just punch them right in the face. But I'm not, no, obviously it was for my professional wrestling. Yes, somebody. We all know it's sports entertainment is the word. Yeah. Somebody threw one that was a bit too tough. I leaned in a bit too much, and then this is... But genuinely, you should have seen it last week. If I had come on last week, you would have thought I almost died. It was like the size of my face. I just like to think it makes me look really cool.
I think it does, but listen, the big rivalry last year was Arsenal-Liverpool. Not just for the title, it felt for a lot of last season there was a rivalry over Isak. I know the Newcastle supporters weren't too happy, but Gyökeres has come in. Is he going to be the big difference? Because it feels like there's going to be a lot resting on his shoulders to make that difference for Arsenal.
Well, there really is, right? Because this is the one, the whole summer and last summer and in the January transfer window, it was just striker. And a lot of the games that Arsenal struggled in, they were making chances, but nobody was putting them away. So he absolutely has to hit the ground running, as cliched as that is. And that's not easy because he scored the most goals in Europe last season. But how many times, I'm not saying the Portuguese league is bad, but how many times do you see people come over and they take a little while to bed in? I don't think he's going to get that time at all. If you get to January 2026 and Arsenal are in the exact same position they were the year before, everyone is then going to start saying, well, how has this not changed anything? I don't think that's going to happen. I think that he will be aware of that. And also, it was 70 million in the end, right? Which is a lot of money. I know the Isak thing, that makes it feel like the steal of the summer, but it's going to be... He's just going to have to... It just is. He's going to have to score a bunch of goals. That's it. There's no two ways about it, because otherwise, Arsenal critics especially can be like, well, you told us you just needed a striker, and now you've got a striker and nothing's changed. What people will do is they'll start looking at Arteta, won't they? They'll be like, well, you filled the hole, and the hole didn't make a difference. Which is why I'm kind of intrigued from you guys' point of view as well, because obviously you see the game differently to how I will. Do you think he fits into what Arteta wants to do? Like, does he strengthen the way that Arteta wants to play?
That deal from going ahead and why they went to Gyökeres?
Yeah, I mean, towards the end of the season, well, I mean, from January onwards, we've been reporting that, it's either one of the two, and I've I've lost count amount of times I've written a piece saying Gyökeres or Sesko, Sesko or Gyökeres, and I've almost got bored of writing their names. And but we know that last summer they really wanted him, and they couldn't get a deal done.
Yeah.
And a bit like with Zubamendi, when they couldn't get him, they thought, well, we will wait a year, and then we'll get him then.
Yeah.
And that's what they were thinking. And then in January, with the injuries, they thought, we'll go for him again.
Yeah.
Again, couldn't get a deal with the line, and they wanted with Watkins as well, and they wanted a loan plus money. But Leipzig at the time was still going for Champions League, so it was up in the air.
Not the right time for them to sell. Yeah.
No, exactly. Yeah, and so coming towards the end of the season and the start of the window, it was Sesko or Gyökeres.
Yeah.
What I understand is that Arteta was the one pushing for Sesko because, again, he's a project manager. He likes to build a team and build for the future, and he saw him as one who could only elevate, and his price value would go up. So if, for any instance, he then left in the future, they can get some money for him because Arsenal now think like that.
Yeah.
And they just saw him as the one, and then suddenly Andrea Berta comes in, the new sporting director, in March, replacing Edu.
Yeah.
And Andrea Berta tried to get Gyökeres when he was at Atletico Madrid last season. Yeah. So there were these two kind of viewpoints of Arteta saying, what about age and what about potential? And Berta saying, well, what about kind of here and now, let's win now, let's score goals. He scored 97 goals in 102 games. Gyökeres, that's nothing to be sniffed at.
Yeah.
And
Sesko's numbers nowhere near as impressive.
Nowhere near as impressive.
I think last season it was 21 goals and 6 assists in 45 games in all competitions,
which isn't bad.
No,
but it's just dwarfed by Gyökeres. And so I think
easier league, to be fair. You would argue the Portuguese league easier league than the Bundesliga.
Well, I'd like to see any of us try and score 97 goals in 102. But I do agree. But what Berta did really well this summer is which Edu didn't do at Arsenal, which is he played off players against themselves. So he carried on negotiations with two clubs simultaneously so that you've got a plan B if something doesn't happen. So when there were talks with Sesko, there were issues with add-ons and personal terms and his agent getting involved. So they then veered slightly more towards Gyökeres, and Gyökeres was a deal that they felt was easier to get done, and it was more of a guarantee because he had been in England before, albeit not very successful, but he had been in England before. So that's where they sort of veered away from it. And in another world, had one negotiation gone differently, this man could be at Arsenal right now. But Man United seem to be pouncing on that, and they're going to get a very good striker if they do get him.
But early this window, as far as you're aware, the money was quite a big factor as well.
Money a big factor.
As in why didn't go to Arsenal?
Personal terms as well. And, there's all kind of agent commissions and stuff like that involved, which was also involved in Gyökeres as well. There's a lot of kind of to and fro.
Didn't Gyökeres ditch his agent? Or no, not ditch his agent, sorry. He had to sacrifice an agent around the 10 million quid fee or something like that?
The 10 million, so Gyökeres, I believe, had to sacrifice something from his contract, and also the agent had to sacrifice his 10% commission fee on the deal, which was a big kind of to and fro, and they weren't really sure they were going to do it, and which is why Arsenal kept Sesko in the loop, because had Gyökeres broken down, they could have then gone back to Sesko. So again, in another world, he could have been starting at the Emirates Cup on Wednesday against Villarreal, but instead Gyökeres, the biggie.